miles of NC-12 in eastern North Carolina on foot and slept a total of 12 hours. I know what you all are thinking. What could prevent Sarah from sleeping? She finished her quarter papers months ago. Well, let me explain. Diane and Deren, a North Face-sponsored athlete, age 52, my parents wanted me to include that, began the Mountains to Sea Trail endurance expedition 3 weeks earlier. The Mountains to Sea Trail, MST for short, runs westbound from Clingman's Dome in the Smoky Mountains to Jockey's Ridge, just over 935 miles in length. Van Deren began in hopes of beating the existing course record of 24 days. Great Outdoor Provision Company sponsored the run, and my dad served as the head of Van Deren's support crew. Right after the senior assembly, I headed out to Kinston to join the crew and finish out the last week of the expedition. I did not have time to collect myself and reflect on my past 4 years at Broughton. This was an unconventional trip to the beach in which instead of lemonade, beach towels, and sunshine, I got blister band-aids, ticks, tropical storm barrel, and a tour of the worst bathrooms in eastern North Carolina. In her mid-30s, Van Deren suffered from epilepsy, and to cure her life-threatening seizures, surgeons removed a kiwi-sized piece of her temporal lobe. Mr. Fraser, Mrs. Green, and Mr. Brooks should take pride in the wheels that are turning in my fine friends before me, as they associate the temporal lobe with the location of memory and auditory processing. The surgery left Van Deren's brain incapable of understanding the concept of time, and it also increased her forgetfulness and made map reading impossible. With these disabilities, Diane completing the Mountains to Sea Trail sounds more unlikely than Ahab capturing Moby Dick. However, Van Deren's grit proved otherwise. I could talk about Diane all day. She averaged 50-mile days and 2 hours of sleep each night. Even though her feet were mangled with blisters, she continually asked about my feet. This woman, who supposedly had trouble remembering, never forgot to remind me to hydrate. For a week, I became the primary manager of her blisters, the late-night pacer, and of course a bathroom aide. And I'm kidding when I tell you when I use the term bathroom, yet no such thing. But with Diane, I was enlightened to the truth behind the saying, it's not about winning. The time I spent on the trail made me aware of how valuable the pair of IV glasses are that sit right here on my nose. You heard me correctly. I believe I have a pair of glasses on my nose, and this abnormal symptom does not show up in the DSM-4. Of course, it may be published in the long-awaited DSM-5. After 2 years in such a phenomenal program, in which being a risk-taker, an inquirer, and a thinker is valued, I believe we look at the world with a different perspective than most. This is what I mean by IV glasses. Think Harry Potter. Early on in the expedition, I nervously shifted my IV glasses. I worried I was replicating Milgram's study of torture as I pushed Diane to keep a steady pace on mile 806. It seemed our quick pace was more than a shock to Diane's weathered body. My IV glasses allowed me to fully understand the value of CAS hours, as the C, A, and S served as a model for how we should find balance in our lives. Late one night, as I paced Diane, I realized I was creatively crafting my words to Diane to motivate her in the most effective way possible. I was actively moving down the street, my calves reminded me with each step, and I was serving Diane. My only focus was her health, progress, and safety. I was full of purpose. The morning light reflected off my IV glasses on top of Jockey's Ridge. The warming air ushered in the answer to my confusion of the true value of winning, of reward. Diane had crushed the record, beating it by over 2 days. But we all stood at the top of Jockey's Ridge, numb to the victory, the win, the A+. I listened to Diane's graceful responses to the reporters' questions. The frustrating phrase returned as Diane told them, as great as it is to beat the record, it was more about the journey, the adventure. I checked her back pocket to make sure she wasn't hiding Melville, but she wasn't. So Diane didn't think it was about winning either. I adjusted my IV glasses once more and looked internally, the conflicting thoughts burgeoning in my brain. With some reflection worthy of my CAS journal, I discovered that yes, winning is and should be the goal. Grades and victories serve as the purpose for effort and growth. Diane ran the Mountains to Sea Trail in order to finish, in order to break the record. She had a focus. But Diane's words reminded me, that's similar to the way we all entered the IB program, that became good grades. But Diane's words reminded me that while winning is prized, as it should be, the experience, the knowledge gained, is what's ultimately valued. I like how the poet Robert Service puts it. invite you to acknowledge the ivy glasses that sit upon each of your noses at this very moment. The glasses are made up of each quarter paper, the fumes of personal projects, the discovery of biolabs, the shadows of poetry analysis, and the past ponderings in TOK. While we sought and achieved high marks in college acceptances, it is the love of learning we garner that should be valued the most. It is this ivy perspective, the critical thinking spectacles we earn, that should be treasured. I understand that I have referred to imaginary glasses multiple times today, and I beg your pardon for the unbalanced